No, Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Friday morning, the 12th of June 2026, with just a minute to the top of the hour. I did not yesterday that our morning schedule may be sort of a bit disrupted because of the kickoff hours of the World Cup. Now, whereas that may pass for an excuse, I must acknowledge us unable to watch the entire Korea Czech Republic game because I woke up, watched a bit of it, like the 15 minutes of the end of the first half, and then I went back to bed and woke up after it had ended. Jesus Christ, this World Cup will be the end of me, but hopefully not. Hopefully not. Well, the FIFA World Cup has been off to a great start. Yesterday, we did witness the opening program, the opening ceremony that culminated with Mexico beating up against South Africa by 2-0, and then subsequently South Korea came from one behind to beat up against a Czech Republic by 2-1. So beautiful, beautiful action, and the action does continue today, as we will see in the course of this podcast. And like our headline has it, it's the kickoff hours that are really, really troubling for me. Because, I mean, a game kicking off at 5 a.m., we have some that are going to kick off at 4 a.m., and there I am thinking to myself, is it intentional that the world does not want a certain parts of the world that to watch these games? Anyways, I know it's really, really difficult for them to find the perfect balance to accommodate all time regions in the respective parts of in the respective parts of the world, because we know time zones vary, and we cannot have it perfected for everybody. We can only try, or they can only try to meet us halfway, and the rest takes it from there. But in any case, our own experience from watching the FIFA Club World Cup, that in which Chelsea were the champions, gave us a glimpse of that, or sort of gave us a snippet of what we expect when it came to the World Cup itself, in terms of kickoff hours, in terms of things like that. But more importantly, I wish to say thank you so much to all our new subscribers, those that have recently joined the community. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. I hope you get to enjoy your stay here with us. Then, also, I want to say thank you so much to all those that were part of last night's podcast. It did kick off late again. I mean, I need to get my shit in order. I need to get my house in order, and I'm really, really trying to do that. So, we'll continue to improve on that. We'll continue to improve on that. But meanwhile, thank you for indulging me every time or whenever things do not go my way, especially when it comes to the time of our morning live broadcasts. I know even the ones for the night. For example, yesterday I got invited by the fan bench for the opening ceremony of the World Cup, which I went and attended at the Vibe House. I attended it from about 6 p.m. to close on to about 11 p.m. and then rush myself home. And of course, when you get home, the bits you pick up on, and before I knew it, it was really, really coming on late, and we had to do the broadcast a little bit late. But that's the nature of life. We just have to be a bit flexible to accommodate one another. So with that said, I can only hope that with the next, because I know people want me to do the watch along. For example, tonight we have a game that kicks off at 10 p.m. That's Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina against Canada, one of the host nations. Then at 4 a.m. we have USA versus Paraguay. I cannot guarantee or promise that I'll watch that game. Then subsequently, on still on Saturday, we have a game between Qatar and Switzerland at 10 p.m. We have a game between Brazil and Morocco at 1 a.m. Those two games I will watch. But then the game between Haiti and Scotland at 4 a.m., that one I cannot watch really. So in other words, I'm thinking there's a part of the world where we could do a watch along for the second half of the Qatar Switzerland game, then call an end to that. I do not know if we'll be able to call an end to that or we'll just continue our way into the Brazil Morocco game, because I mean, if we start the live at 11, literally it would run for 2 hours, and in running for those 2 hours, it will lead us into the Brazil game. If the circumstances permit, we'll just proceed with that, with that feed or that conversation when the time comes. Anyways, we'll digest more of the results that we did witness from yesterday. Very, very much spirited performance, good performance from South Korea. You love to see it. You love to see it. But it's the kind of energy that we had expected. Although a part of me does not really believe that Czech Republic deserved to lose that game. They came so close. They had their moments. They even had a goal by Thomas Suchek that was ruled out for an offside. Again, it was from a free kick. Remember, their first goal came from a long throw in. So it did appear to me, from where I was standing, that they looked to leverage on some set piece play to sort of give them that extra competitive advantage. And I thought their execution was really good to that effect or to that extent. So, anyways, we'll talk about that. Also in the transfer window, as the World Cup rages on, the transfer window is also really booming. Things are happening. Things are happening really thick and fast. And the kind of things that are happening are the kind of things that you'd love to see. For example, Bernardo Silva is set to join Real Madrid as a free agent on a 2-year contract with an option to extend it for a further year. We'll get to discuss that at the most opportune moment, if the time does permit us. But for now, let's keep our attention locked in on the World Cup. The opening fixture had 3 yellow cards. Now, unbeknown to me, or at least it had slipped my mind, and I do not regret it anyways, I was rooting for Bafana or South Africa to win that game, even though my personal prediction had been a 1-1 draw. Then, from where I was watching the game at the opening event, organized by the fan bench and their other partners, it came to my attention that it felt like it was South Africa versus the rest of Africa. And when somebody mentioned it, on first hearing of it, I found it a bit odd. And in my head, I was thinking, what's just happened? Don't we oftentimes unite as the rest of Africa to support, that African team? And then I was reminded of the xenophobic tendencies that have been ongoing within South Africa, in which they sought to expel other Africans who are working in South Africa. So it did not change my mind on who I had to support. I did not change my allegiance. I stayed with Bafana. But also, it sort of woke me up to the realities of some of the challenges that we face as a continent. Obviously, I've never been to South Africa. I've never lived there. I do not know the full context of their justifications. But I feel oftentimes they've had misplaced anger. It's not the first time that we've witnessed that kind of trend of things or things happening in that regard, where South Africans, native South Africans, particularly the blacks, are kicking out fellow blacks from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Botswana, regardless of what part of Africa you come from, to say you're taking our jobs and therefore you ought to leave, go back and fix your countries. I do not think that there will be a single day where the expulsion of all foreigners in South Africa will translate into the sort of economic standards of living that some black South Africans are seek to live with that. Because some of the people that they kick out are people from the very countries that were really, really pivotal to the liberation of South Africa from apartheid. So, and there's this saying that I live by, that one good turn deserves another. Who he gives you flowers must give them flowers. You know? So, in other words, appreciate those that do good for you and return the favor whenever you can. So I feel like some of these South Africans have their anger misplaced. Let me ask this. If, let's say, I raise $50,000 and go to somewhere in the streets of South Africa and open a spaza shop, have I taken the job of a South African who does not have 50,000 to invest in that sort of business? If I feel that that's the kind of business that will help me thrive, you know? And then in some of these countries, and it's not like it only happens in South Africa. For some of the jobs that are available, that these people want to do, are the sort of jobs that do not pay good money. Hey, reluctant gamer, good morning. And are the sort of jobs that do not pay well enough for these people to want to do them. Yep, I did enjoy the Mexico game. How about yourself? So, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a house helping job, and that house helping job pays, let's say, $50 a month. That's the equivalent of about 150,000 Uganda shillings. Is it good money? No. But under a certain set of circumstances, the people that are going to be willing to do it for that amount of pay. Now, as native South Africans, and I'm talking about the blacks here, they may not want to do that job because the pay is little. You get? So then, once there are foreigners who be like, okay, I don't like the pay, but it is what it is, I'll give it a shot. So, in your expelling this, this fellow African, it's not going to turn that job from $50 to $100 just because that's what you would command to do the same job. You get my point? Now, I understand one will make the argument that maybe somewhere underneath the surface, the black soils of South Africa, there's a South African would consider doing it for $50, or maybe this employer possibly raises it to $50 or $60, to $60 or $70, so that it can be done by South Africans. That's usually the hope. But does it always happen that way? I certainly don't think so. Then you have farmland. A lot of foreigners work on farmland. It happens in the USA. It happens in Canada. It happens in all these agricultural nations, that a lot of foreigners help on these farm jobs. Why? Because they are low-paying jobs that ordinarily natives would not want to take up. There's a lot of misplaced anger when it comes to that. And even if you had valid reasons, it should be a national level discussion where you look to reinvent or change the policy about how you accommodate foreigners and the sorts of things that they would be permitted to do once they enter your country, as opposed to attacking them, beating them, and robbing their businesses. That's barbaric. How are you any different from a man who stands up for the right cause, but in standing up for the right cause, he has followers who then go and cause all sorts of disruptions in the disguise of standing for a valid cause? If you're protesting a bad road that government has not worked on, how does that culminate in you robbing my shop? Make it make sense. A South African politician asked, if you say this foreigner doesn't deserve to be there, what does his fridge have to do with anything? Because you're mugging their refrigerator away. So what I wanted to try and explain in all that is the justification as to why the rest of Africa, as I was led to believe yesterday, where I was catching the first half of the game from, we're supporting Mexico at the expense of South Africa. The gentleman who was seated next to Mr. Yassin was equally supporting South Africa. He does not appreciate what is happening down there. But he supported South Africa in it. I've given you my reasons prior to it that include, but not limited to, the idea that it's South Africa, the fellow Africans, but more importantly, that a lot of Ugandan players have gone to South Africa and plied their trade there when it's come to the football. Timothy Batabaide at Bidivitz, Moises Waiswa, what's his name? Dennis Masinde Onyango, recently Ismail Watenga. I'm trying to remember some of these names. They've gone through the South African League and they helped it, be what it is, or at least have contributed their skill set to that. So for me, that's the reason. But I also understand where the others are coming from to say, look here, we have friends, we have family, we have people that we care about that have not been treated the right way just because they live in South Africa. And yet, I do not think, is there a single country without immigrants? I stand to be corrected. So I feel that Black South Africans need to cow their politicians into formulating policies that protect them in a certain manner, as opposed to them taking off their anger on fellow Africans. Like I said, if I own a spaza shop somewhere in South Africa, if it's my capital that I've not gotten from the coffers of your government, how does my living going to translate that into an opportunity for you? It's not. If I'm a business owner, it's not. And then some of the jobs they do are the low-paying jobs that ordinary South Africans do not want to take up on. So the questions should be for the government, not for the fellow Africans to say, how did you come here? Why did you come here? Regardless of what my reasons would be for being there, I'm not there illegally. If somebody is not there illegally, then give them the chance. Give them the chance. So it's very, very unfortunate that we find ourselves divided over lines that ordinarily shouldn't be dividing us. The other example I'll give you, we know the USA have had a similar problem, or in complaining so much about immigrants. And the ripple effect that it's caused in their economy is not a positive one. Why? Because a lot of foreigners from Mexico, from Guatemala, from Ecuador, from El Salvador, from Haiti, and all other parts of the world go to the United States, and they're the people working on farms. They're the people harvesting tomatoes, Irish, watermelons, etc., etc. You know, they're the people helping on farmland. They're the people in the construction business, working as assistant construction workers, you know, doing the sort of jobs that pay you, I don't know, $8 an hour. I don't know, you know, so maybe even five. Who knows? So, as South Africans express their detest, it can also be organized. It can also be organized. It would be okay if they were alerting authorities to say, there's a foreigner that lives next door, but I do not think they are here legally. And then the authorities come check me out. Am I in South Africa legally or illegally? And if I'm there illegally, I will merit being thrown out, given the ultimatum of the days to leave the country. That's how it works. But if I'm being mobbed by the locals, before I even make my case, that's not the sort of direction that we want to take. And our passion for football and our passion for sporting disciplines, for which we do support one another, unfortunately has divided people along those lines. It's very, very unfortunate, but also it is what it is. And I respect people's views for what they are. I just may not agree with some of them, really. Okay, United Road says it's very unfortunate. Morris says if football can't unite us in KwaZulu Natal, then it can't unite us in Mexico. But the brutality is real down there. Exactly. Very, very unfortunate scenes. United Road says, who is, by the way, more familiar with the South African landscape, says ANC is a problem. Julius Malema is probably the safest candidate for the black foreigners. Now, he's the closest to Pan-Africanism and anti-neocolonialism, you know. And you see, the thing about politics is that, for example, when President Cyril Ramaphosa was speaking about the issue, he sort of tiptoed himself around it because of the political context, because of what it means to his voting constituency and that for that of his party, ANC. And yet, when you speak to fair blacks who have little to lose, is that when you speak to the Julius Malemas and other South African politicians, they know that the systematic problems of South Africa do not lay with the foreigners. But like I said, it's the foreigners from those countries who helped South Africa be what it is in part today. They were very, very pivotal to the end of apartheid. You know, countries like Zimbabwe were really, really pivotal. The fighters of Mokonto Wesizwe had their camps there. They sought refuge there. It's the same case of Russia and Cuba. Yes, countries like Mozambique. So, when do we remind ourselves that one good turn deserves another? That those that stood with us in the bad times, we must stand them even when some of the things that are happening we do not like. And like I said, just like any other country, South Africa struggles with border control, that you have people illegally entering South Africa, especially from immediate neighboring countries. I think it was the president of Botswana who was speaking about this, and he was speaking about the policy of South Africa with its immigrants. And he gave the example of if a Botswana national crosses over to South Africa to take care of an ill relative, and for some reason they violate their visa days, they calculate the number of days that they've overstayed, and then they charge them a certain amount, and then that person is banned from entering South Africa for the next 1.5 years. He said, it is the policy, but it is not the right policy. And he gave what they do in Botswana to say, if we gave you a visa of, let's say, 1 week, and you overstayed by extra 3 days, we're going to say, we're going to do some math and say, for every extra day you stayed, it's worth, let's say, $10. And therefore, because you've overstayed 3 days, pay $30, go to the nearest police post, pay that, and you'll be allowed to leave. But it will not culminate into you being banned not to enter the country for, again. So, what's happened to context and humanity? Because a lot of these people cross borders for different reasons. For some, it's trade, business, I'll give you an example. Uganda shares the border with Kenya, but a lot of Ugandans cross into Kenya to afford what could pass for more affordable goods, and vice versa. Recently, or in these times of war, where US and Iran are having a go at each other, the price of gas has gone up in so many countries. But at one point, Kenyans ran out of gas and they were crossing into Uganda to be able to buy it from fuel stations on the Ugandan side. But nobody put a stop to that because we are neighbors. It's a case of, because some people, by the way, I don't know if you've seen the context of expanded families or extended families. So in other words, you have your grandfather living in Uganda, but for some reason, part of your other land is on the other side of the border. So your uncles, your aunties are living on the other side. We are one and the same people, So let's not forget some of those things. Anyways, all that was to paint for you the picture of how a lot of Africans ended up supporting Mexico instead of South Africa. Whereas I do not think that support would have culminated into a change of the final result that we did witness yesterday. But at least we have always known each other to stand on one side against the rest of the world. That's what I've always come to expect and to experience. Hi, Mitchell Wainscots. Good to have you back on the broadcast. Anyways, to the game itself. Like I said last night, right from the onset, it felt like South Africa had gotten their tactics wrong because they played with a back five. And the back five was as very evident. Obviously, they looked to Mudau and Modiba to be the overlapping wingers or wingbacks. But they did that to very little effect. In fact, Mudau looked more comfortable or operated more in deeper areas than in the forward areas. That's why he was a bit more effective. Insert anger, hello brother, hello to you too. Way too negative. So it felt right from the onset that South Africa were ill prepared to play in the system that they played in. A back five, a midfield three, and two strikers. One of whom looked like the most unfit player on the turf in Lyle Foster. You see, for the opening game of the campaign, I expected a certain burst of energy from all these players. But sometimes I did not see it. I did not see it. I expected more. I just did not get that. Maybe I was too optimistic. Maybe I was too desperate in a way to see South Africa thrive. But it almost felt like Lyle Foster had spent the previous night in the bar, or he had a certain load of weight on his shoulders, Way too negative. Insert says rugby is nice. I'm from New Zealand, played rugby South Auckland from 1985 till 98 on the left wing. Thank you so much, Isat Anga. And good to have you on the broadcast. You say you're from New Zealand. Haha, Lyle Foster. And then you ask soccer. Yes, we are talking about soccer. You look like a Jeffrey Epstein, bro. I don't know what your name is because it's not in a language that I can afford myself to read. But whatever your name is, I don't know if you mean that as an insult or as a compliment. But I do not think in the wake of Epstein's recent reputation, it can in any form or shape pass for a compliment. But do they play soccer in South Africa, Loro? Yes, absolutely. Shaka will roll in his tomb. You say that's like in New Zealand, soccer club look like a haunted house, cobwebs, etc. So for South Africa, first of all, we expected to see some players on that turf that we did not see. Players like Mofokenge, we did not see him on the turf. You know, players like Ziwani, you know. So I know he came on. Like Ziwani eventually came on. But once he started with the back five, it came at the expense of a lack of control in midfield and in the wide areas. In the first half, and as was the rest of the game, in my humble opinion, I thought Rowan Williams and Mbokazi were South Africa's best players on the evening. And the moment the goalkeeper is one of your best players on the day, that tells you everything you know about how bad the rest of the team is. If the defenders are looking the most brilliant on the day, that tells you how badly you've been pinged in. And yet I felt that Mexico were there for the taking. They're not the most elite side on the day, you know, but the way they denied South Africa spaces. What I appreciated about South Africa was that they had the confidence and comfort on the ball, oftentimes. Obviously, sometimes they got caught out of possession, which culminated into some of their problems of the night. But that does happen, especially with teams that play from the back, because it's a risky venture. But at least I appreciated that they had that comfort on the ball. They look to pass the ball. They look to enjoy the game in a way. They did not try to boot the ball high up and see what happens kind of style, you know. So at least I appreciated that. But in the execution of whatever the game plan was, it did not come out well. Sithole, who ended up with the red card, if you're playing a back five, because his red card came quite early, you know, in as early as the 49th minute. That was before, I think, substitutions were made. How does the number 6 end up being the last man making a foul that culminates into a red card when we are playing in a back three? How does that come about? So, I remember South Africa's first attempt on target came through Mbokazi, a long-range shot. It was quite spot on, but because of the distance, it never really had the strength to eventually trouble the Mexican goalkeeper, you know? So I felt South Africa did not do themselves any favors. And some of the changes, I expected a halftime change to say, okay, given how we've seen the first half play out, we're withdrawing one center back. We're strict dropping back with, you know, a back four, and we're going to try and create some overloads in midfield where we can have playing options, because Mexico in their zonal marking They overloaded that midfield with numbers. So it felt risky for South Africa to go through down the middle of the spine of the pitch. So they looked to go through sideways, through Modao and Modiba. And again, when you watch the movements of Mbokazi, he was more tilted to the left than you know. That is what it felt like. One of my microphones is spoiled. I do not know if there's a solution for it, but it's very, very frustrating, for me at least. Anyways, we'll leave that at that. So, at the end of the day, South Africa only had 2 shots on target, 1 off target. In other words, a total of 3 shots. Possession-wise, they ended up being dominated because they ended up being reduced to 10 to 9 men. So even that Mexico stole to the tune of 69%. You know? So, if anything, Hugo Bross will need to fix his mind before we appreciate what South Africa will be able to give us on the pitch. Otherwise, that's not the sort of display that we had hoped for or we had expected on the night. You see, that sort of back 5 system is really good if you've been playing it and perfected it. It can be very, very lethal. Especially if the wing backs know their movement, because they move so high up the pitch and create overloads in the width areas or in the wide areas. And then with the 2 strikers that you have them be joined by at least one of the midfielders. Because in that sort of system, one of the midfielders also joins the attack. So in the attack, you end up with an overload of 5 players. So then in the midfield, where you leave 2 players, you have one of the center backs join them to protect, to create a protective belt of 3 players, and then 2 at the back. But the amount of times the play passes in between them, and sometimes it felt that they looked hesitant to press the ball. Like that slight bit of hesitation would cause you to give away space, you know? Okay, he is wise. I played only one time soccer. It was a 5-a-side soccer, 5 per team, very small goal box with only 2.5 meters. I had like 10 attempts at scoring, but the goalkeeping just stood with one hand on the on his hip. Catch, okay. You say ball with the other hand. There was no way you could get a goal. Okay. At least you have an experience of soccer/football. Okay. Rose Kikon says, is this an auction? Not really. An auction for what? How much you toll and weight? I don't know how much I weigh. Maybe about 120 pounds. 6'3", 240. How is pounds abbreviated as LBS? Sounds like a lot of bullshit. You know? That American weighing system is the most flawed thing that you'll ever see. Is the most flawed thing that you'll ever see. Anyways, convert it to kgs and maybe we can have a discussion. Height-wise, I'm not 6 feet. Okay. Alakazma says $3. Sati say 20 to 55. Somebody says $20. Is this no, it's not an auction, please. An auction for what? So you guys are they are thinking you can take me for a slave. You want to buy me? Jesus Christ. It reminds me of that joke by Deliso Chiponda, the Malawian comedian based in the UK. Deliso Chiponda is the one that made that joke. You know, he was talking about the good old times. And he was speaking about how things have changed. And he said, back in the day, this would be an auction and that would be the commodity, something like that. Place your bets, your bid. Thank you for your bid. No pounds. That's very small. You mean kg? That's 250, 265B lobes. What height? Not 6 foot. Yeah, not 6 foot. Lolo. I know Dutch people and people from New Zealand are really tall people. Are really tall people. Smiling is free. Just subscribe. Can I get a big smile? If not, it's cool. Hi, smiling is free. Good to have you on the podcast. I hope you're doing okay. Buy you $5 negative dollars. Then train you boxing heavyweight champion for the world. You make millions. I don't think I have the weight to pass for a heavyweight. But I don't know. There's bantamweight. There's is it flight weights and then heavyweight? So, anyways, we'll see about that. So, anyways, as the game wore on, South Africa got themselves another red card. This was in the 84th minute for Zwane for what felt like a retaliation in the context of him being blocked. As he looked to go beyond his blocker, he sort of swabbed his arm in his face or on his cheek, and then it was given as a red card. A very soft one that I wouldn't ordinarily give or did not think was worthy. It felt like nitpicking. And then Montes, in the 92nd minute on the side of Mexico, was also given matching orders for that late foul in denying what was deemed to be a goal scoring opportunity, a last man challenge. And then he got his matching orders. So the game finished with 9 men to South Africa and 10 for Mexico, as Mexico kicked off to a winning start. Subsequently, at 5 a.m. this morning, 5 a.m. East African time, there was a game between South Korea and Czech Republic. Beautiful game of football, very fluid, very attacking. I like the passing patterns, the way people were comfortable on the ball, not overly passive, but able to string a couple of passes that lead you into the final third right pretty quickly. You say heavyweight starts at 91 kgs, 205 lb. Maybe I could make it. Maybe I may need to add a pound or two, but you never know. Leo Lentau says, those are not red cards for South Africa, in your view. I had no qualms with the first one. I had no qualms for the first one, but it was the second one with which I picked a bone, Then somebody says, how does South Africa rank in soccer? I don't know. Rank, not too bad. Not too bad. They're not among the very best. They're not amongst the poorest. So they are mid-table or average. All the host teams will win their first games. It will be very unfortunate if it is sort of predetermined that way. I feel it's your sporting merit on the day that should win you a game of football. Fortunately, or depending on which way you look at it, I feel that Canada have a winnable fixture against Bosnia-Herzegovina. It's not because Bosnia is easy to beat, but when you look at their group, Bosnia and Canada, sorry, and Qatar will be the beatable teams if you're Team Canada, because Switzerland will be a hard nut to crack. They have that bit of a reputation about them, you know. Okay, have you ever played rugby? Nah, better have even ever touched a rugby ball. So, like I said, the other game was between South Korea and Czech Republic. Beautiful game of football, one that I really, really did enjoy, even though there were no goals in the first half. Like I said, I woke up, caught the 15 minutes, the last 15 minutes of the first half, and then it felt like South Korea were the ones creating more chances from open play. There were two chances that fell to their captain, Song Heung-min. He fired one of, I think, over the bar and another wide of the mark. So the first half culminated with a show of intent and high spirits from South Korea in comparison to Czech Republic. However, upon the resumption of the second half, in the 59th minute, it was Krejcik who scored to make it 1-0. Shot 7. He did score also in the playoffs. Then some of these names are going to be difficult. But Lee Kang-in played a brilliant pass to Boehm to score to make it 1-1. That is in the 67th minute. While in the 80th minute, Hyun-gu did score to make it 2-1. And that is a that's the scoreline, or that sort of determined the game or defined the game, you know. Then in terms of when you go to some of the key statistics, you will see that South Korea had 6 shots on target compared to Czech Republic is 4. 5 off target for South Korea and 3 off target for Czech Republic. South Korea dominated possession to the tune of 62% compared to 36% of Czech Republic. Excuse me. South Korea also had 4 blocked shots. You can see that they dominated in majority of the key aspects of the game, and that was with good reason. However, at the tail end of the game, the South Korean goalkeeper had to pull off a couple of saves to ensure that his side stayed on the winning end of things. I think the goalkeeper is called Kim something. Kim something. You know they have those names that can be hard to pronounce, but they also have some easy names like Lee Kang-in, like Lee. There's so many Lees, Young, etc., etc. So for Czech Republic, I thought from open play, they struggled to create chances. They did create a few that, especially at the tail end of the second half, where it felt like they were fighting for their lives to try and secure a point, you know, but it just did not pay off. Okay. Okay. Do you think Cape Verde will beat Spain? No. I don't think Cape Verde will beat Spain, but nah. Spain are just too good. Too good for many opponents. Insert Anger says, what do you get if you cross a cook in Salda? Sorry. What do you get if you cross a Cook Islander with a Pafoe quitter? I don't get what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying. Then Capybara says, yo Capybara, good to have you on the broadcast. So anyways, that was for the opening fixtures of the World Cup. So Group A have 2 winners in Mexico and and South Korea. We'll wait for them on match day 2. But more importantly, moving forward, like I said, today there are 2 games, one between Canada and Bosnia Herzegovina, while A will take on Paraguay in the wee hours. That's at 4 a.m. And then action will proceed subsequently on Sunday at 10 p.m. between Qatar and Switzerland, and then Brazil against Morocco at 1 a.m. That will be literally Monday, and then Haiti against Scotland at 4 a.m. And then we will go from there. Then in Group D, there will be a game at 7 a.m. between Australia and Turkey. That will be, I think, on Sunday. Yes, on Sunday. Then a game between Germany and Krakow at 8 p.m. So, and a game at 11 p.m. between Japan and Netherlands. Again, you can see now those would be favorable kickoff times: 7 a.m., 8 p.m., 11 p.m. That's really, really good. Not these hours of 5 or 4 a.m. For L growth, Gorithi says, hi, brother, good luck. Portugal here. Oh, Portugal. Wow. Portugal is one of the favorites at this year's tournament, but they'll have to wait until Wednesday, the 17th of June for them to go through. Oh, algorithm. Apologies on that, algorithm. Is that Minata or Minuta? Hope Situezi. That's my nickname. Okay, algorithm. Thank you so much. So Portugal will play on Wednesday, the 17th at 8 p.m. against the Democratic Republic of Congo. But I mean, it will be really, really fun. If majority of these games are kicking off between 7 a.m., we have 8 p.m. Kickoff games and 11 p.m. Those ones are really fun. The rest, I feel that games that are going to be played in Mexico will make kickoff a bit late going forward. Excuse me. Okay. Switzerland should do well in our group. Yep. I tipped them to top that group. That's my prediction for them. Situezi is her mama. He is insulting you. Dumb person, ignore him. I don't know what that means. I don't know. Let me tell you how this works. If you insult me in a language that I don't understand, you're wasting time, because I do not know what it means. I wouldn't know. Sorry, misinterpretation, Lolo. I don't know. If you insult me in a language that I don't understand, that's on you. Imagine if I said something in Luganda and you do not understand it. Will I have communicated? No. Okay, so Bosnia and Herzegovina gets on today. In terms of my expectations, I want to see a good Canada. Guess I was wrong, sorry, for the Swiss. Okay, algorithm. So I want to see players like Jonathan David, how they perform. Alfonso Davis, that's if he's even fit to play, because he's oftentimes injured. It's one of their key players, you know. Ibrahim Kone in that midfield. No, sorry, Ismail Kone, not Ibrahim. Ismail Kone. Summerbank says, good morning, Mr. Tribe. Good morning to you, Summerbanks. How have you been? Are you better now? I was led to believe that you're a bit unwell. My hope is that you do get better at the earliest opportunity or earliest time possible. Have a quick recovery, in case that is true. Okay, then on the side of Bosnia, of course, Edin Dzeko is one of those players that Mzee Wakazi must be 40 at the moment. Must be 40. And yet he still does soldier on. But let me see. Yeah, Alfonso Davis has a hamstring injury, so do not expect to see him. Then Bombito will be absent through a leg injury. Then is it Josh March or James March, the head coach? But let's wait and see. Okay, what you think it happens if Argentina and Portugal meet in the quarterfinals? It's quite probable. Yes, it's quite probable. It would be a good game. It would almost pass for a final before the final. That would be the sort of caliber of game it would be. But nonetheless, I'd still tip Portugal to win the game. Not because Argentina are weak, but because I don't know. I believe in that Portuguese talent. Really so much. So much. And unfortunately, for Portugal to win it, they would need to excuse themselves of they'll need to excuse themselves of the idea that it's a game that is Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo. Once you reduce the game to that, one of you is terribly going to lose. But once you put the two big names out of it, and by that, by the way, by extension, I mean, do not start Cristiano Ronaldo the game, regardless of what sentiments there would be or what the optics would be, just sit him on the bench. Okay, Summerbank says, I'm getting well. Thanks a lot for the prayers. What happened to Miss Viola? Unfortunately, I'm not privy to what's happened to her. So I cannot tell you with absolute certainty. Maybe Summerbanks can help us, understand a bit better if there's anything up with her. But I think she'll be back with us soon, most probably for the evening broadcast. We've never had an interaction with her during a morning broadcast, not to the best of my recollection anyway. You say yes, very true. So are you going to watch every single group stage game? That is Ash, the Tottenham fan. No, I unfortunately, as much as I would love to, this head of mine is incapable of doing that. Why? Because I need to find a moment to also sleep. And it's because of the kickoff hours for some of these games. Some games kick off at 4 a.m. in the morning, others at 5 a.m., others at 1 a.m. So for any game that kicks off anywhere between 7 a.m. in the morning to 1 a.m. in the night, I'll watch. But beyond that, I cannot guarantee. Maybe, but there's a game for Brazil. It will I think kick off like at 3 a.m. That one I may compel myself to watch, regardless. So I'll do my best to watch as much as I can, but keeping up with every single game, I may not be able to. And then some games, for example, imagine sacrificing your sleep just to watch Haiti against Curacao. Would it be worth it? Maybe it would be worth it. I do not know, but it may not be worth it as well. Okay, you say, wait. Algorithm says, I'd say that it will help us because Cristiano has the thirst. Lionel Messi has already won the World Cup. Well, yes, Lionel Messi has already won the World Cup. But in the context and tactics of the game, I feel given Portugal's quality, there would be better performance when he starts off on the bench. Because if you're going to play the reigning champion, you must bring your A game. You must bring your A game. And unfortunately, Cristiano's A game is no longer there. It is no longer there. It's now his B game that we are witnessing or experiencing. He's like an aging lion. You know what an aging lion does? It knows it cannot go out there and chase the gazelles and the wildebeests or all the prey. It no longer has that energy. It no longer has the athleticism. So what it does, it will hide somewhere close to the water source so that when these animals come to quench their thirst, it can pounce on an opportunity and strike from there. So that's how Cristiano Ronaldo goes about his game. He knows he no longer has the athleticism to drive the ball from deeper areas into the forward areas, and therefore he will always look to be in and around the middle and final third kind of spaces, so that he can easily carry the ball. And I don't know if you've noticed, when he receives the ball from deeper areas, and I'm talking about around the center arc, and just slightly beyond, he's definitely going to pass that ball to the nearest player, as opposed to him going on a sprint. He'll pass the ball and jog himself into another space to try and receive in a more advanced position. So when you're playing with such a player, I understand he's trying to adapt. He's very good at adapting his game to his physical shape, but it may come at the expense of the team in some moments. That's why I'm saying, or I'm of the view that personally I'll start him on the bench, because in starting him, it's simply leaving to the stereotyping of reducing the game to being a Ronaldo versus Messi game. I know we cannot disabuse ourselves of making it about that, but I feel we can. I feel we can. You know. Okay, let me take in some more of your comments. Oh, where did I stop? Oh, Jesus Christ. Let me see. Okay, I think somewhere here. I understand Cristiano Ronaldo is still capable of very, very good moments, but those very good moments tend to fall far between, even at the World Cup. For example, he's played at 5 different World Cups and he scored in all of them. But in 2006, in 2010, and in 2014, he scored only one goal in each of those World Cups. It's in 2018 in Russia where he scored four. And then the previous one, 2022, he scored one. So you can see where I'm heading with that. Okay. Lolo, that's from United Road 10. If it gets Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo, it will favor us. How? How? Because trust me, Messi has realized that he does not necessarily have to be the star of the team. Yes, he is star of the team by virtue of the pedigree of his name and stature of brand, but he'll drop off in the deeper positions and create those chances for the others to score. Yet ordinarily, Cristiano Ronaldo is the reverse of that. That he will occupy the advanced positions and be looking for the rest of the team to create for him. And once you make it about creating for him the chances, you're going to lose the point. When you look up to scan who is better placed to give that ball in the final third to try and score, you ought to disabuse yourself of the bias that it has to be Cristiano Ronaldo in a way. I hope that makes sense. Summer Banks responding to United Road, you say she's kind of busy these days, but she'll be back. Okay. Okay, how do you know, Lolo? Summer Banks and Viola are fairly acquainted, from what I gather, based on their interactions on the platform, are fairly acquainted. I don't know to what degree, but fairly. Oh, Jamarius says, who your support at the World Cup? United Road 10 is supporting South Africa. I support Brazil. I believe Summer Banks is rooting for Portugal. I don't know about the rest. Okay. Jesus Christ. Okay, Summer Banks responding to United Road says, I interact with her on different platforms, sir. Ash says, if I watch every single game, I won't be able to prepare myself mentally for the Premier League. You need to prepare yourself mentally for the Premier League. The Premier League is still far away. June 19th, I think, is the date that has been set for the release of the Premier League fixtures for the subsequent season, but it does not kick off until about the 22nd or something August. Remember, there's also preseason. The World Cup ends on 18th. Is it 18th? No, 19th July. That's the day of the final. So you have more than a month between post-World Cup to the start of the Premier League season. So you'll be well prepared for it, regardless. Okay. That's why some people criticize the 32 to 48 teams in the World Cup. Well, I mean, when change comes around, a lot of people will criticize it because we do not take too well to change. Like it's the case of if you do not change, change changes you. So oftentimes we accept change after after it's been there for some time, as opposed when it's first introduced. I'll give you an example. In Uganda, we used to have scratch cards for airtime. You know how you buy your lottery ticket and scratch it to see what the numbers are? That's what we had for airtime. So you would then dial a certain code, input those figures, and load airtime on your phone. Then government banned scratch cards and airtime moved digital. So you buy airtime off of your mobile money or you go to an agent and they load for you airtime. It came with a lot of criticism, but eventually people adapted to it. Then one of the other very unpopular moves was the switch from analog to digital. Back in the days, I did not need to pay for TV to watch TV. All I needed was to afford myself a TV, have an antenna, and I accessed all local channels. Now, in this scam of a modern world, the move to the digital side compelled TV owners to be able to afford pay subscription or pay TV to access even local TV, which I find very, very unbecoming. Now, obviously, there are what they call free-to-air decoders, which you do not need to subscribe for monthly to access TV. Those ones you simply buy a decoder and you go enjoy yourself. You access all the local content. But when it comes to pay TV platforms like StarTimes, DSTV or GoTV, those under MultiChoice, Zuku, Simba TV, and others, you must pay a monthly subscription even to access local channels. So that's where I have a bone to pick with them on that regard. So the same way, when it comes to the change of from 32 teams to 48 teams, there's always bound to be a certain level of resistance or people that do not love that sort of change. But it is there to stay, and whether you like it or not. Not all change is always good, but sometimes we just have to live with it. Some people will tell you VAR is a blessing to the game. Others will tell you, nah, it's the worst thing to ever happen to the game. You know? So you may look at it that way. Okay. I feel it's Portugal this time. There's a certain feeling about that. There's a general acceptance, but that general acceptance is more wishful because based on the quality that Portugal have. Like I said, for example, when we went for the 2010 World Cup, there's an overall expectation that Spain will win it because they had a really, really decent squad, well within their prime. They had just won the Euro 2008 under Luis Aragonés when they beat Germany by a goal to nil in the final. That goal by Fernando Torres. I think the final was played. Was it the one played in Austria, in Vienna, Austria? So Then going into the 2010 World Cup, they had the best squad, and they were then at the time under the charges of Vicente de Reboschi. So particularly at this opportune time, it's Portugal that have the more complete or balanced squad. They are under the charges Roberto Martinez. And I've always said, without any fear of contradiction, that any reservations I have for Portugal lays not within the quality of their squad, but the tactical ingenuity of the manager. Is he capable of getting them over the line? Until he does, I'm not yet compelled to believe that he's entirely capable. But the squad is really, really good. Okay, that was from Summerbanks. DCI Sniff says Pele was a great footballer, one of the greatest of all time. You also say Ronaldo is not the best footballer, is not the best at football. That's your view. There are people that believe that he is. Algorithm says we agree, but we agree, but do not forget that 3 goals. Don't forget the 3 goals he scored to Spain in Brazil World Cup. He's less incisive, but motivation is fuel to Cristiano Ronaldo. You can be motivated and still not deliver. You know, I know he's motivated. I know he's very competitive. I know he's desperate. You're always desperate to win. Remember what happened at the Euro finals of 2016? Portugal did not need him to be on the pitch for them to win the game of football. That's all I'm saying, that they can win without him. He's an important player for them, but sometimes he's going to cost them a game, not intentionally, but by their own application of themselves, because he's on the pitch. Because of the stardom that he enjoys, because of him being the marksman of the team, oftentimes they are seeking him out as opposed to making the best decision in the moment. I'll give you an example. It's like me going into a discussion or a debate where I'm biased towards tilting the debate in a particular way. Then I'll not accommodate myself the room to learn or to explore other views if I come into that discussion with my mind already fixated on something. So if Portugal think that they have to play around Cristiano Ronaldo for as long as they get in the final third, that's the wrong mentality. I want them to have that freedom about them. You know? Now, it can work 2 ways. Either he starts on the bench, or it is him that tells the team how to go about it. Do not look for me. Unless I'm in the best position, do not look for me. Go and score yourself. Look for the next best option other than me. Because trust me, if you have a scenario where you are attempting to cross the ball into the box, or you need to float it in, and you have, let's say, a Francesco Tricao marked by one defender and Cristiano Ronaldo standing into two center backs, chances are high you're going to look for Cristiano Ronaldo than before you think of Conceição. Why? Because you think he's the most capable man to beat his 2 markers. And whereas that is possible, but why are you seeking out a player who already has 2 markers on him and leaving the one with only 1? And then in some cases, instead of you shooting to go for goal, some people will then try and look to pin that final pass for him. So he needs to create that sort of orientation within the squad to say, guys, as much as I would love it to be about me, it's not about me. It's about the team. So if you find yourself in the good space, go for it. Do not search for me. You know? So that's my view or assessment of it. Okay. I think 32-team format was more standard. It was more standard because that's what you are accustomed to. Trust me, a person who is witnessing the World Cup for the first time does not give a rat's ass of whether it was 32 teams yesterday. All they know, it's the World Cup, it's 48 teams, and that's what we are going to enjoy. But because we have the experience of 32 teams, we cannot disabuse ourselves of the bias that we have towards the bias that we have for what we already knew or what we are accustomed to, in comparison to what is there as of present day. So, and I've yet to see any signs that suggest that the 48 teams are bad. I think I'll wait for the overall assessment of the tournament to say, yeah, maybe this 48 team is not the best thing to happen to football. But it's also the first time it is happening. So even if I were to criticize it, I'll have certain drawbacks or reservation to say it's the first time it's happened with 48 teams. Let's give it a chance. That will be my view on that. Okay, quickly. Ecuador and Ivory Coast, which country will make it out of the group stages? I think Ivory Coast will be more likely to make it out of the group than Ecuador, in my humble opinion. That's if they are able to bring for us the kind of game that they brought against France. So they're in Group E with Germany and Curacao and Ecuador. But also they can both make it out of the group. Remember, for some of these teams, for many of these groups, there are 12 groups. But out of those 12 groups, we'll go back through them and see the 8 teams that finished as third best teams. So in other words, you could finish third and still make it to the round of 32. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, algorithm says we sometimes do take the game to himself. Don't forget Sweden versus Portugal, qualifier, 2 goals, Zlatan, 3 goals for Cristiano Ronaldo. Okay. Ash says South Africa is too poor. Well, it felt that way last night. Did it not? When you doubt in him, he gets mad and doesn't forget. I think you're mistaking that for an acknowledgement of a stage of the career he is at. Okay. Guys, I'm trying not to skip any of your comments. Poor typo, that's okay, Ash. Motivation, haha, typos always get me. That is the cynic. John the cynic. Okay, sorry, yeah. It's all right, Ash. He'll have better World Cup. He will have a better World Cup than Messi. And I'm a Ronaldo hater, but I know how we work. Well, I'm not a Ronaldo hater, by the way, and nor am I the Messi enthusiast. I just love them both, So, and it is possible for Cristiano Ronaldo to have a better World Cup than Lionel Messi. That's very possible. It's like, okay, let me not even give the example. Summerbank says, but supporting Brazil, okay, yeah. You see, the thing about Portugal is that you have Cristiano Ronaldo fans who say, because Lionel Messi won the World Cup in 2022, we wish for Cristiano Ronaldo to also win the World Cup. There's that section they're not necessarily fans of Portugal, but they are Cristiano Ronaldo fans. So they mean him well. And they pay allegiance to a different nation. So take the example of Summer Banks here. She aligns with Brazil, but she wishes him well. By the way, Summer Banks is a Manchester United fan, for context, in case some of you could be wondering. Okay. Kamal says hi. Okay. I love Ronaldo. I hate Messi. That's from Kamal. It's very unfortunate that you cannot find in your heart the appreciation of Cristiano Ronaldo and what he's contributed to the game. I don't like the water poses either. It's not NBA. Again, it's something that you have to get used to because it's the summer, the weather is really, really hot. So, and many of these players are not accustomed to playing under those conditions. So I do not like it either that much, but I appreciate it for what it is, because I wouldn't want to see a player collapse on the turf just because we cannot afford ourselves 2-3 minutes or even 5 minutes for a water break. No, that's not what I want. I mean, we also saw it at the FIFA Club World Cup in the United States the previous summer. So, and even in Qatar, we saw it, the water breaks. So they've been there for quite some time. I understand it comes with with a certain bit of frustration for the fans, because they are used to the game, going on for the entire 45 minutes without a stop, unless otherwise when there's been an injury, to one of the players, and it's a key injury. Player has to get on-field treatment, and then they run off to the sidelines, pick a few instructions from their head coaches, and sip some water. So I think this is not intended to create pauses in the game. It's intended for the welfare of the players and their overall health. Okay. Messes up the game. I understand where you're coming from or why you feel that way. As says, Japan has something about themselves which might surprise everyone. Japan, very, very hardworking team. Hydration break. Yes. Okay. You're reasonable, but that is quite a consensus. 80% of the people will agree, but they do make mistakes as well. Yeah, very many mistakes. Very many mistakes. Then United World says, I saw Dalot do that last game, looking for others in the box. Exactly. Cristiano Ronaldo needs to empower his teammates to also execute, to sort of encourage them to execute for themselves if the moment feels right, as opposed to be constantly on the lookout for the next best player. For example, you saw that goal by Bruno Fernandes in one of I think in their friendly against Chile. Okay, then against Nigeria, I think they have spoken about what you said. Okay, thank you. Hello, sir. That's Rio Dandy. I can't come in your live often nowadays just due to my exams. I completely understand, Rio Dandy, and we wish you the very best of luck in your exams, and we hope that you do excel, and we'll be looking forward to having you back once you're done with exams. Rio Dandy is in medical school, so he's going through his exams. Mitchell Wine's quote says, Semedo disappointed me. He was well positioned to give another player the ball to score, but acted like an NRM MP. If we are to play CR7, use the head to know where his whereabouts. Exactly. Now, that's the thing. They need not to constantly be on the lookout for Cristiano Ronaldo. You just need to constantly be on the lookout of the best positioned player on the pitch. He will get disappointed for not receiving the ball. But if you're scoring and winning, if you're doing things that are, putting you in a better place in the game, do those things, as opposed to thinking that Cristiano Ronaldo should still be the protagonist of everything that you look to do. So, algorithm says 99% of Portuguese, including me, say that CR7 shouldn't start every game, and Ramos is more proficient. I'm just saying that he is unpredictable and can come up with a good run. Also, team is united. Exactly. That's what we've been saying. It's okay for Portugal to say, okay, which opponent are we playing today? We are playing maybe DRC Congo. CR7, you will not start this one. Let's start with Goncalo Ramos, and then you will come in the 65th minute or 70th minute, and we see from there. It's okay for Portugal to say you start the next game. but it shouldn't be a given that he must start every game, you know. Okay. Then you add that they won't collapse. Cyclists do 270 kilometers top speed. It's high performance athletes. The water poses in is Americanization are good for commercials too. Yeah, it's a case of shooting two birds with one stone. You afford players the commercial, the water break, and also do the commercials during that break. But cyclists always have water bottles. They receive water bottles from bystanders, and you'll see them swap out those water bottles. But how many times do they have to do it in the grading sun of the summer? That is also a question, you know. So I do not think it's that simple to say we should get rid of it. Like I said, for me, I would rather prioritize the health of those players. A lot of people will look at them as weak. I'll give you an example. We have what we call the Coca-Cola post primaries. It's a football competition that is played by secondary schools across the country, and those high school kids go and play football throughout the day, sometimes playing 3 games on a day, morning, mid-morning, and afternoon, in the grilling sun and things like that. But they do not get a water break. I understand that thing, but let's prioritize their health as opposed to us being selfish to want a constant game. It doesn't kill anybody when they go for that water break. It's because you're not accustomed to it that you're opposed to it. But is it a bad practice for the health of the players? You know? Or unless you're saying it should be implemented in a different format. You know? So mushrooms, Summer Banks, you want to eat mushrooms? You want mushroom soup? Okay. Mitchell says, I do not know, but I fancy lining Felix on the other uh, left flank, and Bernardo on the right, or Consecao, the other than Pedro or Liao. Those Liao and Pedro are real scammers. I don't think they are real scammers. Pedro Neto, did he score in their last friendly? Again, it's about how Portugal tries to get the best out of them. But I don't think Pedro Neto will be a starter. I think it will be Liao and Consecao that could be starting. Then Joao Felix could even play centrally. But he's capable of that. He's capable of playing centrally. Bro, but you're saying there is no water bottles in the bank? No. Are saying the cyclists you're talking about ride with water bottles. They also quench their thirst. You've even seen marathon runners. For them, they do not stop, but they get handed water bottles by bystanders to have a sip or two as they continue with their run. Rehydration in sport is very okay. It's almost there in every sport. It's just the implementation of it that is different. For example, when you go to volleyball, they'll do their water break during a change. For example, when you play the first set, win or lose, and you're swapping sides, you can have your water break. You have all these sporting disciplines that can ask for timeout. Even in boxing, it's there. But how long is a boxing match? Every round is 3 minutes. and in some cases 2 minutes. But if those ones can take a pause and ask for timeout, how about in football that is going to be played for 1.5 hours? You know? So, Giro was the last month Tour de France in July, 35, 40 degrees. I think you met bro. Oh, okay. Yes, they did that. But like I said, they have water bottles. And once that is empty, they pick a bottle from a bystander and swap it out. Because you need to stay hydrated. So, unfortunately for them, as an individual, you can stop to get a bottle of water. But competition-wise, it puts you to a disadvantage. So, you gather a water bottle without stopping. Sip the water and tuck it in on. There's that sort of base angle that forms the complete or triangle where they normally place the bottle, you know. Okay, it's not about health in Qatar, yes. What do you mean it's not about health? In Qatar, it was also very hot. Let me ask, if you're saying it's not about health, what's the purpose of rehydration? Let's start from there. Because now you're focusing yourself on the commercials that happen during the water break than what happens on the player side during the water break. If the referee put the game to a stop and everybody sort of stood static where they were, I would acknowledge and say we do not need that in the game. So, and by the way, even during when, let's say, there's a player that is injured on the pitch and they're undergoing treatment, players often run to the sidelines to pick a bottle of water to rehydrate. This one is just the formal bit of it to say, let's formalize it that we'll have a water break. But players have always sought to rehydrate. You've seen some run to their goalkeeper to ask for some assistance with that bottle of water, because usually goalkeepers have a bottle of water in somewhere in the back of the net or besides the goal, you know. So when you say it's not about health, I don't get it. If you've ever played sport, any sport, even if it were lawn tennis, at some point you're going to get thirsty. So, okay. SSB says, hello SSB. Weather won't be a factor. There is air conditioning in stadiums. I think the air conditioning is more for the fans than it is for the players. I don't live to live, says Crip Mark. Or Hood, what's cracking? Jesus Christ. Mitchell Wine Scott says, it's those who have never been active in sports who would see water break as something not good. But if you have ever been in sports, you'll know its importance. Exactly. Exactly. How many times do we see players take a pause during the course of the game just to catch their breath? You know, we've seen them leave their mouth agape because it's competitive. You run, you use a lot of energy. Sometimes you need to take that pause and breathe in. I've seen players do that. You know, some players even fake injury just to take a pause in the game. Forget the time wasting bit of it, because that's also an element of its own, but just to catch their breath, you know. Bro, you have water bottles in bench for 90 minutes in football. The same there is faults. Referees communication, VAR, the play always had 90 minutes. Nobody complained. You see, we do not have wait for people to always complain for us to improve our practices. If you're constantly waiting for people to first complain and then improve a certain practice, then you're not going about it the right way. So we shouldn't be waiting for people to complain first to improve some of these sports. But more importantly, I understand what you're saying, that there is VAR breaks and and um, and these other stops in the game. I'll give you an example. Today they've introduced this 5-second rule on a throw-in, that if the referee feels that you're trying to waste time, they'll begin a time count of 5 seconds. And if you've not thrown the ball back on the pitch, you're going to do what? We're going to hand the ball over to the opponent's team to take the advantage of the throw-in. What's that meant for? To improve the game, to cut out time wasting. We've extended the same rule with the restart of the ball with the goalkeeper. If the referee does sense that you're trying to waste time, they're going to go on account of second rule. It's not to say that the ball is never going to go out. It's not to say that players are never going to waste time. But they're trying to improve, to constantly improve. So all these stops are there in the game, But this one has been just officialized to say, we'll take a pause in the game, and our players hydrate. By the way, I've also seen it before. During the month of Ramadan, when games take a pause just for Muslim players to take some bit of water, there are those small snacks that they may eat sometimes to help the game. So should we put ourselves to a position that we cannot stop the game just because we're not Muslims and we do not mind whatever happens with them? I think everything that has happened, and like I said, we may not all accept the change that comes with the game. You and I may not like it, but what's the overall intention? What's the underlying intention of having that change in the game? It's okay for you and I not to like it, that the game has to stop for players to take some water and recuperate. That's very fine. But what's the intention of it? Is there a valid reason for that to be implemented? I come from a place where I believe it's a valid reason for the game to stop, for them to take water. I may not like it. I don't have to like it. But what's the benefit of it? Or what is it intended for? I'll give you an example. If, let's say, a policy is introduced and some people abuse the policy, it's not the policy that is at fault. It's the people that abuse the policy. So let's look at it that way also in a sense. Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Why did I stop with some of these comments? Somebody said $30 donated, $30 through Super Chat. Not that I've seen, but that's from Al-Kazam. Then SSB says hi, donated by Al-Kazam, $20. Like I said, I've not seen it. Bro, I ran 500 miles last year. I do 17-kilometer runs mostly every day. So what's that supposed to mean? You run at your own luxury. You run at your own pace. You're not in competitive sport. If at the end of the year you've run a total of 500 miles, which I do not know if it is true anyway, but let me assume it is. But Are you running 500 miles a year in competitive sports or at your own pace, doing your own exercises? That's the question I'll put for you. Okay, SSB is right. But back in the day, they had no water breaks, and players like Maradona played some of the best games in history. Like I said, changes are constantly coming to the game to try and improve the game. We may not like some of these changes, but at least they are well intentioned. Let me ask, at the genesis of the game, there were no referees. So, do we all like referees in today's game? We may not like some of the decisions that they make, but we're not going to be opposed to them being part of the game. There were no yellow cards, there were no red cards in the history of the game. I think until, 1970 or something? So, the game has morphed, constantly been evolving. These things of proper demarcations, that the size of the pitch will be this and that, the goalposts will be this and that, those have all come with the improvements of the game. Look at the ball that they kick today. It's lighter, it's a bit softer. They tell you the pressure in that ball has to be to this percentage. But in the history of the game, in the days of Pele's, that wasn't the case. Those regulations were not there. Today, managers get booked with yellow cards. A couple of years ago, that wasn't there. So, whether you like change, advancement, technology, and improvements, whether you like them or not, they're going to be part of the game. Yesterday, we did not have goal line technology. That's how Roy Carroll picked the ball out of the net at the expense of Tottenham Hotspurs when they're playing Manchester United. So, was that a bad thing to introduce goal line technology? So let's not pretend as if everything we appreciated about the good old game has been eroded simply because the game is being improved. Let's not pretend that way. The same Maradona you're talking about is the same player that had a ban for using unaccepted substances. So, today you have a case of Mukalo Modric, who is being accused of having used medication that contained meldonium, which is a banned substance, and yet it's used in medication to treat cardiac conditions in Eastern Europe. So, and this idea of the first half will be 45 minutes and the second half will be this number of minutes, those were all inventions or introductions to the game. People played their legs tired. Now somebody has decided to spam the live. Okay. Players are fit enough to have no water breaks. Okay, that's your view about that. Players run 11 kilometers on average at most per game. Okay. SSB says, sure, the water helps the performance, but it won't help a player as much as people think, in my opinion. Okay, that's your opinion. If you want to know its importance, try trotting around your home for 20 minutes. You'll know the purpose of water break or a cooling break. Also stipulate under the conditions during which for which the players are currently playing in. What the F are we talking, Lolo? See what is Altranas or Trio? Is that, I don't know what that is. Okay, SSB says we cannot compare your average Jose to a professional footballer. We cannot compare your average Joe to a professional footballer. These professionals have played and been training in various conditions and are fit enough to do without water break. You see, you've now made it an instance of do or die. Is it my network? No, sorry. My network dropped a bit for a second, but it's now back on. It's not a do or die. It's not a do or die. It's not that if they do not have the water break, they will die. No, that's not the question. But if it's something that helps, then we can have it. Like I said, we do not need to first wait for a player to drop dead on the pitch because of his stroke for us to have a break in the game. No, let's not wait for that. Prevention is always better than cure. The 5 seconds, I agree. Some things I do, some things I don't. I'm just expressing my opinion. Sorry if it's different from yours. Like I said, I don't know if you had this, but I said at the end of the day, change is going to come. You and I do not have to like it, but we just have to accept it for what it is. I do not think I like every change that is come to the game, but I accept it for what it is. You know, I've cited for you the examples of how football is evolved, the introduction of referees. And by the way, at the first introduction of a referee, he was not on the pitch, he was standing outside the pitch. You see how you have an umpire in volleyball or even in lawn tennis, they are off the court, you know. So that's the history of it. And then eventually they were moved in. And then they brought linesmen, and then they bring in a fourth official. So, and by the way, let's say in 10 years to come, the people that are just starting to watch the game will not even care to say that there was never a water break. They will simply be accustomed to that, and it will feel so normal. So for some of us, these changes feel abnormal because we've not been accustomed to having them, you know. So let's keep it at that. Okay. Please do not compare. Please do not compare Ramadan to this. It's not equitable. No, it's not equitable because they are one and the same thing. But the point is that you bring a game to a sport to favor a certain group of individuals at the expense of the majority. You know, in this particular case, the water break is for everybody. But in the other incidents, you bringing a game to a stop to favor a certain group of people who align themselves to a certain school of belief that is of little concern to the others. But it's simply an accommodation to say we respect enough what they believe in that will accommodate them that stop. You know? So, in a way, it's common courtesy out of an acceptance or an acknowledgement of what they believe in. And in this particular case, if those that plan for the game believe that it is worthy for us to bring the game to a stop, for these players to, you know, take a breather, so be it. You know? Okay. And if the game is played during the sun is out. By the way, let me give you another thing. You see, I don't know what your reservation about the water break is, but did you know that the game or the ball spends an average of about 35 to 38 minutes on the turf being played, and you lose some minutes with the ball being off of the pitch? In other words, the 90 minutes that we long for, we actually get sometimes about 60 minutes of the ball being actually in the pitch. Not so long ago, somebody had come up with a proposal where they sought to have the game time reduced from 90 minutes to 60 minutes. That's also a sort of change that was being mooted. I did not like it from the sound of it, right from the onset. You know, why? Because I'm accustomed to 90 minutes. I feel that 60 minutes will be too short. Somebody suggested that the 15 minutes of halftime is even too long. And they would want to change it that. So at the end of the day, we may have different views and opinions about certain aspects of the game, but for the changes that come, we'll have to accept them for what they are, even though we do not align with their justifications. You know, so expect lots of changes to come to the game between now and again. For example, the offside rule, the broad daylight offside rule is being tested in the Canadian League. Why? Because the the chief of football at FIFA, St. Charles Wenger, or global head of football, is of the view that these things of marginal offsides, where somebody's in an offside position, here by their ear, by a finger, by their shoulder, by the tip of their boot, by a shoelace, by I hear their face, by their shadow. No, we should cut out that and go for broad daylight. In other words, there must be a clear line of sight between the last attacker and the last defender for it to be ruled as offside. Do you think a lot of people are going to like that change if it were to be effected? No. But also, they're trying to avoid leaving it being a subjective sort of nature of thing. So for change, it will continue, keep coming in the game. Whether we think it's okay or unfortunate, it will have to come. And if the game is played during the sun is out, the same Muslim players can power through without food and water. If speed of light moves in a circle, could it go beyond itself? That's cause I don't know. There is a break after 45 minutes. Drink as much water as you want. It's my opinion. Well, it's your opinion, but if you had played football, you will also know that drinking too much water before you go back on the pitch is not good for you. If you have played professional football before, you'll know. Actually, you do not need to have played professional football before, but for as long as you played football at a certain level, even if it was at amateur level, and you played a 45 minutes half, and then went into a 15 minutes break and returned, trust me, you cannot drink as much water as you think your body will need for the rest of the game in one go, and you think you'll be good for the game. So that one sounds like a view that is come from a place of little experience with the game, in the context of you being the one actually playing it. Temperatures during the Maradonas and Pele at times were cooler than these days. Good point, Mitchell Wine Scots. We in different spaces and contexts, we constantly talk about climate change, and suddenly people think, or we want to lead ourselves into thinking that that's not a factor. I'll give you an example. Growing up, I knew we had 2 rainy seasons and 1 dry season. As we speak today, that's changed. Literally, you'll experience 1 long, lengthy rain season and a very lengthy dry season. Why? Climate is changed over time. And whether it's changed for the better or for the worse, we must adapt as human beings in a way that we live within that space. So basically, there's also that bit of element, you know. So some of these, I'll give you an example. There's Norway players were being given ice coats, literally, to try and help cool their bodies. Why? Because they come from a very cold country. They are very accustomed to being in a cold weather. That's what their bodies are accustomed to. And then now they've gone from literally from one extreme end to another. And somebody was trying to lead us to say or to think that, oh, these players train in all sorts of conditions. No, not all of them get that chance. You have players from Iceland who are accustomed to the cold throughout the year, the course of the year. You have people from certain parts of Russia where it's literally always cold. So, you know, I don't know if you watch the UEFA Champions League, teams went to Moscow or to Russia and oftentimes struggled, especially on those winter nights. But then the Russians playing in those conditions, oh, they felt like they were really enjoying it. Like it was free flowing for them. Why? Because they are more accustomed to it than these others that are coming in. So I do not think that these players are all well adapted to all sorts of conditions. They may be fairly adapted to certain levels of conditions, but I do not think all of them are well adapted to each and every, condition. Okay. Okay. Algorithm says the flow of the game. Sorry, you said the flow of the game is lost. For me, it's not bad improvement. I stand on it. Sorry, champ. The flow of the game is lost. When you say the flow of the game, what do you mean? Do you mean to say that the flow of the game is lost because of the water break? Because I do not want to believe as such. Because if the flow of the game is indeed lost, I do not think it has everything to do with the water break. Now, there has to be other factors for which you believe that the flow of the game is lost. I've given you an example. When a player gets injured and they need treatment, should we say the flow of the game is lost because the player got injured? Because injuries are also part of the game. Because it's a contact sport, players end up clashing and some get injured. I've seen players needing treatment that is exceeded 5 minutes. And that's why at the tail end of the game or a particular half, we have added time to try and compensate for lost time. Because we believe that this is all part of the game. It's not our preference that they happen, but they are part of the game. I've given you the example of sometimes players faking injuries to need treatment, pretending. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it does happen, because unfortunately, when it comes to faking an injury, it's he who feels the pain that has to tell us what they feel, as opposed to us interpreting what we think they must be feeling. So when you talk about losing the flow of the game, I'll give you an example. You can lose the flow of the game because a certain team is constantly booting that ball outside for a throw in, for a corner kick or something, or for a goal kick. You can lose the flow of the game because it is a team strategy to deploy to sort of play that way. So where do we place that as a factor when it comes to the flow of the game? You have a team whose strategy is going to be to commit as many silly fouls or cynical fouls as possible just to disrupt the flow of the game. I'll give you an example. If I'm Congo and I'm playing Spain, and I'm not going to match them when it comes to the tic-tac football. So I'll use whatever advantage I have to disrupt the overall flow of the game so that I kill their game plan to try and gain a competitive advantage. So there's also that element to it. So I do not necessarily think that it's the water break that kills the flow of the game. Okay. Oh, sorry about your network, Summer Banks. Sorry about that. Hadi Pro says, I donated money for your knowledge. Hadi Pro, I'm yet to receive it, but I almost passed you for spamming because you typed the same thing. But in any case, I would have gotten the notification. It would have displayed for the world to see. SSB says Mexico 86 was hotter than this current World Cup. Okay. Hi, this is Raymond Kangumba says, hi, I see France and Germany in the finals this year from Ray. Thank you so much for your submission. Well, it is your view. I may have a contrary view to that, but Spain are definitely one of the favorites, as well as France, even though I do not think France will win it. Mitchell Winescott says, we used to play football at our youngest age full day without taking water or a break. Nowadays, I cannot even play 90 minutes without resting. You know, some people have not had the chance to experience that. You know, some people have not had the chance to experience that. I've given you the example of post-primaries, where students go and play 3 games in a day, and we're talking about competitive matches. Competitive matches, 3 games in a day. So, but that's not at the professional level of the game. Okay, Upset Propaganda says, shout out, please. All right, Upset Propaganda, shout out to you. France and Germany in the finals from Ray. So, Raymond Kangumba, which is which? Okay, you say handsome. That is Kenny official. My reservation is the flow of the game. Okay, yes, your reservation is the flow of the game. And I understand it and I appreciate it for what it is. But like I've given you the examples, it's not necessarily the water break that you'd attribute to a disruption in the flow of the game. I've watched Chelsea play Barcelona and they look to cause a disruption at the earliest opportunity that they could afford themselves, because they know if you give Barcelona the flow of the game, for them to gain the momentum in the game, they're going to cause you problems. So their strategy was commit silly fouls, go down as soon as you're literally challenged in a physical duel, and kill a couple of seconds to kill the overall flow of the game. That can be a game strategy. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the official breaks of the game, you know? So the context of killing the flow of the game can come from different sources. The water break could be one of it, but in the history of the game, I do not think it is entirely that. And I do not think we have a history of a game where we've had a ball be on the pitch for 30 minutes consecutively without going out. I don't think we have that in history. I'll maybe try and do my research, or if somebody is well familiar with the historical data and context of the game, can bring it to our knowledge and say, this was the longest period of time the ball stayed on the pitch without going outside in a game of football. I'll give you another example. For us who have had the chance to watch games where the stadium is not developed, a guy puts the ball high up in the air, it goes in the bush. People spend minutes looking for that ball. It kills the flow of the game. Would we love it to be that way? No, we wouldn't love it to be that way. But it's the resources that we have. I've seen ball boys be hesitant to hand over the ball back to the players. So, don't they contribute to that? I've seen fans where the ball is kicked into the fans and they push it further forward, away, to try and delay or have a sudden bit of delay in the flow of the game. So the reasons for that could be more than one, in my humble opinion. Okay. Raymond, I've read your comments. We can accept, but we have an opinion. We can make criticism. Matter of fact, criticism is how the game evolves. Do you agree? I certainly agree. We criticize so many things at every end of the game. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, we were criticizing that second red card to South Africa. I do not believe that every single physical duel should culminate into a red card, especially in a contact sport, you know. So we must we must have the common sense to weigh and say, this, okay, is worth it. I hate it when the game is being overly officiated, or when it feels overly officiated. It also kills the flow of the game. You could have can have a match official who glues themselves to that whistle like it was zested with honey before handed over to him. That all the time is literally blowing the whistle at every side of anything in the game, which also kills the flow of the game. So there's also that element to it. So I've had the ugly opportunity of witnessing that about a referee. I've seen referees who believe every slightest of a foul is worthy of a yellow card. And I'm thinking, no. So we can criticize so many things about the game so that we can have it improved. That's true. That's true. It's the improvements come from criticism. And that criticism, you and I will have to agree that comes from different sides. So what you are criticizing about the water break, be sure that somebody criticized the game for not having a water break, so the water break was introduced. So their constructive criticism was, we need to have a water break for these players. I don't know whether it was out of their personal experience or otherwise, or certain observations, but I believe that was the source of it. So somebody advocated for it, and then it came in the game. But because we human beings have differences in opinions, that for which at the end of the day, we respect each other's opinions, they had it their way, and we do not have it our way. In the sense of, we would not advocate for a water break. They advocated for it, and they got it. So I sort of respect that. Okay, Brazil is taking the trophy. So Raymond Kangumba, how is Brazil taking the trophy if it is Germany and France that are going to be in the finals? Make it make sense, Raymond. Make it make sense. Thunder Ghana says, Ray, you are delusional. Scotland are the new World Cup champions. Thunder Ghana, I feel you're being, okay, you're biased in a way. Like, you root for Scotland, that's okay. But if your justification for Raymond being delusional is about Brazil winning, I don't think that is. But I wanted to challenge him for which is which. If you think it's going to be a final between France and Germany, then how do Brazil become champions? Unless, because even if it were to be, the champions were to be born out of a boardroom, there's no way you give it to a team that never made it to the finals in the first place. Okay. Jesus Christ. Okay. Apologies, guys. Apologies on the internet glitch there. My battery had also warned, so I needed to have it plugged in. Okay. Okay, let's run quickly through some more of your comments. Algorithm was saying, I'm not rebating your opinion, champ. I accept it. Mine is different. We agree to disagree. Derek Henry says, free Camelo Anthony. Then Reaction King says, you have a sarcastic comedy voice. I don't know if that's a compliment, but thank you for the observation. Raymond Kangumba says, hi, France taking the World Cup trophy is for France. Okay. A good example is La Paz, Bolivia. They play in high altitude, and many times other teams lose, or even better ones. It's their home stadium. They should change their location to please their team. No, that's one team, one location. We're talking about rules. You see, we're talking about change that is implemented in the whole game, not change. I'll give you an example. Ghana have this tendency, when they host a country, you land in their capital, Accra, and they will take you to play from a remote city, because it is going to cause you to travel another 400 kilometers just to get there. And it's going to cause your players to tire a bit. They will take you somewhere in Tamale. That's just a tactic. So Bolivia, accustomed to playing in that high altitude environment. I've just given you the example of the Russians. They are well adapted to playing in their snow and very cold environments on a Champions League night. And teams that go there struggle. But we cannot tell the Russians, find a hot environment that suits the opponents that come to you. No, no. That's not the right way to think about it. No, teams go earlier and do their training camp earlier. That's what they should do. Algorithm. I don't know how to explain this to you because it's now not a difference in opinion, but rather a disagreement on a set of facts. I'll give you an example. If you took me to Canada today in the very cold weather of Vancouver, I cannot adapt to it in 1 week more than the person that has lived there for 20 years. I cannot. I have stayed there. I may have experienced it, done my training as an athlete in it, but I'm not going to be well adapted to it as a person that has lived in it for 20 years. So whether you go a week early or 2 days early or a month early, you're not going to be more adapted to it than a person that has lived through it their entire lives. You know, people even struggle, professional players struggle with even adaptation to food. Food. You come from a different set of culture where the cuisine is entirely different and you go to a different one and you struggle with that. So adaptation can come even at the simplest of levels. We used to play football we do ons are called home to wash utensils. The game ends. There you wait for your help, the owners wash them, and then they get back. In other words, Mitchell Wainscott's is talking about a disruption in the game, in the flow of the game. In other words, if you went at a local playground and you're playing football, then the owner of the ball that you're using to play got someone home for a house chore. They would run away with the ball, first do the house chore and complete it while you wait for them to complete it and then come back with the ball for the game to resume. So we've experienced disruptions in the game right from years gone by. But anyways, jokes aside, that's for the amateur level, and, but it's just trying to give context of what could cause a disruption in the game. Second red card was justified. Football contact is normal, but arms to the face or neck is aggressive behavior. Again, okay, agree to disagree. Another topic is excessive matches per season. Vitinha has 60 plus matches on his legs. Again, excessive matches. Players have talked about this, but somebody made the argument that how come construction workers do not complain for the long hours that they soldier in, and yet they are getting even less pay? And you're talking about players that are paid quite healthy, So again, agree to disagree. Yes, there's so many games being played. It takes a toll on players over the length of time, which causes both physical and psychological or mental fatigue. So when somebody sits out there to devise a means of how to, let's say, help players deal with that or cope with that, again, I'm sure we'll be here one day to sort of either criticize, to criticize a certain change that will have been brought to that effect or to help alleviate with that. Okay. I think it is bad for both players, I think it's bad for both players' personal life and quality of the game. Then one bad 5 Stone says, thank you for your service. Thank you so much for your kind comment. So now, so the same players you're saying it's not good for their personal lives and quality of the game are the same players that you're telling they do not deserve a water break. Even when you acknowledge that they are playing way too many games. You see? So anyways, you've seen managers like Jurgen Klopp step away from the game to try and have a semblance of a normal life. Because in this professional life, there's a lot that you miss when it comes to the personal side of your life. Because it's like a bicycle chain. It never ends. It keeps rotating until such a point in time where you have a definite stop, a break in the chain to say, now you can go off to the summer break. Now, again, you've cited the example of Vitinha. He's a player who played last season, and I mean 2024, 2025. At the end of that season, he went for the FIFA Club World Cup. had very little for a summer break, and started the season 2025-2026. He's culminated that, having played the Champions League final, and he's now going to the World Cup, you know. And after the World Cup, he's going to play another season of football, in between which there's a UEFA Nations League. Before you know it, there's a UEFA Euro qualifiers. And then by the time we get in 2 years' time, we're going to be playing Euro 2028. So the cycle keeps going. It keeps going. It's a lot of games. And it does affect the players in one way or the other. So if accommodating them a 3 or 5 minutes water break does help, then we should take it. It does not solve it all, but half a loaf is better than nothing, you know. Okay, let's wrap up, guys. It's been 2 hours and 16 minutes of having the engagement. You're giving me argument with your response. If they are fit for 60 plus matches, they are fit to drink from water bottles. Jesus Christ. Nobody died from dehydration in 100 years. So, in other words, that was my argument in the first place, that we should not wait for it to get to that for us to then make the change. So, in your school of argument, in this particular case, it's like you're saying, unless something really, really bad happens, then we should, that's when we should change. Today, we have players wearing these chest straps to help monitor the distance they run, their heat map, etc., etc. Today, some players have to monitor their heart rates. It's all to try and improve either their personal lives or their side of the game. You know, today there's tracking data for so many things as part of the game to try and lead to positive change in the game. But because technology wasn't there yesterday, these changes would not be effected. So, as society changes, as technology evolves, as so many things come to light, and new information that is being gathered over a certain period of time, expect changes to constantly keep coming. Like I said, you and I do not have to like them, but we'll have to accept or have to live with them, because those that have brought those changes, it's not like they wake up out. They wake up out of the blue and say, we are going to introduce this. You remember when they proposed, was it the green and the white cards? You know, for like a player can be given a timeout instead of a yellow card. We've heard of these things, you know. So inventions and innovations are constantly going to come in the game. In the professional football, you are forgetting Vitinha played even Nations League, where he played in the final and won it. Exactly. So, as you advocate for his personal life and personal health, remember that it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. You're cherry picking example. Okay. Yeshe says, I can't read what you said. Yeshe. Anyways, guys, it's been a wonderful 2 hours and close on to 20 minutes of having this discussion about football. But as I sign out, allow me to remind you that Real Madrid have reached an agreement in principle with Bernardo Silva, a free agent, to join them on a 2-year deal with an option to extend it for a further year. Jose Mourinho made the calls on that one. He wanted to sign the Portuguese midfielder as he thinks he's going to be a key part of that. I think he's a brilliant acquisition for Real Madrid. He's a short-term fix, but you know, quite an experienced player that they are getting in Bernardo Silva, a leader and a proven winner. Algorithm says this was fun. This was a good chat. Don't think I haven't played football. I was called Crespo by teammates 3 or 4 head goals per match. Okay, that's brilliant. Congratulations to you. It's good to know that you've interacted with the game at different levels. So, and in your own rights. I'll give you an example. Our experience of the game in Africa, beyond what we watch on TV and the professional bit of it, may be quite different, perhaps from your experience. I don't know if you've had the chance of playing on a ground that is bare soil. for where as soon as you fall, you're going to have your knees bruised and elbows. I don't know if you've had that experience, but it's all good. So thank you so much, algorithm. Thank you so much, Mitchell Wines Quotes. Kaiser says, who is better, Lamine Yamal, Mbappe, or Dembele? I think Lamine Yamal is more skillful. Mbappe is more effective as a runner with the ball and scoring. Is not very comfortable operating tight spaces. Dembele is equally very, very gifted. I think it will be hard to choose. But based on their how long they've been in the game, I'd say Dembele for me. I'd say Mbappe, and then Lamine Yamal in terms of who is better talent-wise. And the reason as to why I bring Lamine Yamal in number 3 is because for me he's yet to stand the length of time for me to start putting him in those sort of brackets. Okay, that's where we played. It's called Pelado, Straight Rocks, Lolo. Now there is pitches, obviously. Okay, thank you so much, algorithm. Thank you so much, Yesh. Kaiser, it's been a pleasure. Mitchell Wines Quotes, thank you so much for always chipping in and your time and dedication. Reaction King, thank you so much. Raymond Kangumba, Derek Henry, thank you so much. Thunder Gunner, thank you so much for having been part of the broadcast. Kenny Official, Raymond Kangumba, Upset Propaganda, Summer Banks, Hadi Pro, SSB 28. Guys, by the way, we have memberships. For as low as 2,000 Uganda shillings, you can become a member. That's for about $0.58. And then there's a package of about $1.2 and another of about $2.5 US for memberships. So kindly support the channel by subscribing to be a member. I don't think $0.5 or $1.2 is too much to part ways with, but that's in case you're up for it. But thank you so much, guys. Okay, who else? I do not want to miss the shout outs to people. Okay, I think I've gone through. Kamal, thank you so much. United Road 10, it was a pleasure to have you as well. Ash, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Okay. Insert anger. Al-Kazama, thank you so much. It was wonderful, having the discussion and interaction with you. Reluctant Gamer, you are part of us where we started from. Morris Kato, thank you so much. And every single one of you that has been part of this broadcast from right where we started at about 9:59 a.m. to what is now 22 p.m. Ugandan time. It's been a pleasure. We'll continue to do with the discussion. Obviously, we'll be back for our 11 p.m. broadcast in the night. All I recommend is you subscribe, turn on your notifications, and you'll be notified once we go live. You say it's been a pleasure. Have a good day. There is the Portugal hymn for the World Cup. It's named Sam. It's named Sam the Kind. Tag O Nada have to listen. Okay. See you. We'll be back. There's also an artist in Uganda called Waiki Benda. He has a World Cup song. Please check it out. It should be available on his YouTube channel. I think he's called Waiki Benda. Let me type the name here in the comment section before we sign out. Waiki Benda. That's the name in case you need to check it out. Otherwise, you've been such a wonderful audience. Thank you so much for your time and dedication towards the channel. Allow me to wish you a blessed day because I need to run and participate in another forum for an extended conversation on football because football is the life that I live. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed. Peace.